Fire needs air. So many clients come to me and they can't figure out why they feel like platonic friends with their partner.
Yeah.
Well, now, first of all, let's be real. The last couple of years during this pandemic has been hard. Nobody's really gotten air, literally and figuratively. So we have to at least acknowledge that. But the question is really like, what are you doing for yourself?
Yeah, truly.
Spend some time apart. Do your own thing. Pursue your passions. Do what lights you up and makes you excited. Then you're going to be more excited about your partner. Hey, I'm Vanessa Bennett, and today on Ever Forward Radio, I am here to discuss our new book, It's Not Me, It's You. We talk all things relationships, relationship with self, relationship with partner, the hard work it takes to actually relationship better, and so much of that actually has to do with taking responsibility and pulling from curiosity always.
Yeah, my name is John Kim, one of 5,623 John Kims in the greater Los Angeles area. I wish my name was Chase. That's such a badass name. Yeah. Anyway, the big thing we talk about in this episode is pulling from curiosity instead of judgment, not only in your relationship, but as a practice to live on a higher frequency in life. So.
Oh yeah, we're both therapists too.
Yes, barely. I'm barely a therapist.
Barely.
Yeah.
John, Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Welcome.
I thought we were going to do old hands.
Welcome back.
We can. I'm
Say
here
grace.
for LA. We can get weird. It's totally fine.
I love it.
Say grace. The Southern Baptist in me would love that. We're here to talk about one of my favorite things in our overall wellness and just the human experience, I think, and that's relationships. I was sharing with you earlier, one of my favorite pieces of content I do on the show here is every month my wife and I sit down and we do relationship health, and it's so much more than the obvious, so much more than just a man and a wife, a partner, two partners. It just turns into the multifacetedness that is how important the quality of our relationships are with ourselves, for ourselves, and with those around us, and how that really pours into everything else we're trying to experience and optimize in life. So my first question for you guys is, why this book? Why now? Why the topic of relationships? And why is it so important for somebody to really focus on that aspect of their life right now?
Ooh, why this book right now? It's a meaty question.
Yeah. You wanna
Take a swing?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say why this book right now, I think John and I both do a lot on our own. And over the last few years, there have been times that we've come together and done things, whether it's on social or in person, whatever. And people always respond so well to seeing not just two people being honest about their relationships, but two therapists being honest about their relationship.
That's some unique flavor.
Yeah. I think in therapy school, you learn you should be a blank slate. You shouldn't, tell anything about yourself. You shouldn't let your clients know anything personal about you. And we are very anti that. I think kind of like what you were saying about relationships, we heal through relationships. We heal through other people. And the healing that happens in the therapy room, a lot of it comes from the connection that you have with the person sitting across from you. And so how can you have a deep connection with somebody if they're a blank slate? It's not possible, right? And I think so much of what we've seen is people saying, oh my God, the way you guys, have talked about X, Y, and Z, what you said about X, Y, and Z in your relationship, it changed my relationship. It really helped me see things differently. And I think it was partly at least a catalyst, right, for us to say we should go through and talk about the things that most of our clients struggle with and that we struggle with and put it in print,
Yeah, it was tough writing this because we had to call each other out, or else the book wouldn't be good, right? So to be transparent, to pull the curtain back, and to say that here are, because it's part memoir and part client stories, so here's what we're working through. It was vulnerable, It's different when you're writing a book on your own, but then when you're writing with someone else and you're calling each other out, it's hard.
Yeah, there were a couple spots I remember you being like, "Ooh, that was kind of hard to read or kind of hard to hear."
Yeah, hard to digest.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You said something right out of the gate that I can relate to, and I think is so important to establish and nurture meaningful and quality relationships, and that's calling each other out. When I say that, I immediately go to, I think conflict. I think saying something or bringing up a topic that for me for my partner or whoever I'm communicating with on the subject matter is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And more often than not, I'm speaking from experience in the past, we circumnavigate that.
Yeah.
How can we call somebody out? How can we potentially even start a conversation that's going to call us out? But going into it, we want to get on the other side of it. We want this to be fruitful, but we need to have that difficult conversation.
Yeah. So when
I
you
still
when-
struggle with that.
when you say
Yeah, it's a
call,
process for sure.
in our world, when we say call people out, usually it's lined with like blame or pointed fingers,
Like an
right?
aggressiveness, right?
Yeah, there's conflict.
Yeah.
There's like, oh,
Like
what did I
you
do
did
wrong?
this.
Yeah.
I need to talk to you about something. Yeah.
And so I think what's healthier is we talk about in this book, try to understand before trying to be understood, which is, one of our things. And it's been a game changer for me because I've always in relationships, I would go into things trying to prove my point, being the lawyer, here are my feelings, here's my angle, here, all that, very logic.
Here's Exhibit A.
Yeah. And then trying to slowly change the person to see things through my lens. And so to call someone out doesn't mean that, but actually means to explore, support, and to investigate the other person. Try to see through their lens first, so trying to understand someone. And I think when two people do that, then the soil for growth is much richer. Now there's room for empathy, and the pointed fingers go down, the shields go down, and I think from there, then relationship glue can be produced. From there can be connection and like real work getting done instead of just defensiveness.
Yeah.
And shield.
And as somebody who's, I would say, still pretty conflict averse, I struggle with it a lot. And so I think it's been a nice balance actually to have somebody like John, because he's the one we actually talk about in the book, like what's the middle ground between like the verbal vomiting, wanting to talk about everything, and then which is usually him, and then the me, which doesn't want to talk about anything, right? I want to sweep it all under the rug, not rock the boat, not say anything, eat the resentment, and just live with that. And so trying to find that middle ground is a process and a practice, right? Because both of you have to do what's uncomfortable for you. But it's baby steps. It's never going to be just magic all of a sudden, perfect all of a sudden. I'm going to screw up, he's going to screw up. But I think what John said is exactly it, which is being curious, being curious about yourself in the process of sharing, being curious about your partner in the process of sharing. And as long as you can stay curious, judgment and curiosity can't live in the same space.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So as long as you can continue to lean into being curious, again, even if that's just being curious about yourself and like what's happening for me internally when I'm trying to speak up and, communicate, then you can't really get into judgment. And so it's helpful.
I would love to go there a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yes. But first, I want to, I guess, share something a little personal,
Please.
but I'm sure listeners can relate, and I wonder if you can too.
Yeah.
In my relationship now with my wife, we've been together about over 8 years now, married for about 6. And in past relationships, intimate ones, personal ones, but just people in general, now that I am on the other side of it, I can really say that it was my level of gut truth commitment to that relationship that made or broke me. I was broken to the ability for me to want to open up and to have those hard conversations. But I want to make that better. And I'm sure somebody listening right now wants to make that better. Instead of maybe committing to, I'm all in on this relationship, how can we first and foremost develop maybe it's curiosity, but just a more open mindset so that I can just, you know what, I want to give myself a chance, and I want to give this relationship, this conversation, more of a fighting chance. Before I dig my heels in, before I sweep it under the rug. Maybe the trust and the development will come, but is it just you got to just open up and just hope for the best? Or are there any tactics you guys have to, how can you really make sure that you're not sweeping it under the rug and giving this relationship a fighting chance?
Wait, so in your relationship, it seems like there was some kind of arc.
I missed that part.
Like,
So I used to be that person of sweeping everything under the rug.
Oh, okay, not talking.
And
right.
then as my relationship with my now wife developed, and like the seriousness that I realized that I had with her and the future that I wanted with her, it absolutely allowed me to open up more. So
Well, and there was you knew it was imperative, right? There was something about it that you said, oh shit, this is so important to me that I better start to open up.
Also,
What happened?
we had a
Was
hard
it-
conversation where she's like,
Right.
you need to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, I don't
It
know.
can't work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So how has that been for you? Because no one teaches us this, and
No.
so we never practice it. And like fitness, if it's not practiced, and if
There are no reps.
there's no
Right.
reps, and so to go from a pattern of not talking and avoiding and all that to realize, okay, I need to now open up. That doesn't happen over the weekend,
Here's what I will say. So, as the person who's similar to you struggles with the communication, right? What I talk to a lot of my clients about is, listen, there's a certain amount of discernment that has to go into. I'm not now just going to open up and be vulnerable to every Joe Schmo in the street, right? Because I have to be discerning in who I
Right,
open
yeah.
myself up to, obviously. But if they are relationships that mean something to you, and it doesn't have to be something as deep as your relationship with your wife. It could be the relationship with my coworker. It could be my boss or my friend or whatever. I always say, for many of us, when we start doing this work, communication being on that list, it's almost like you find yourself getting to a crossroads where you're like, okay, I can take a right or I can take a left, right? The right, I'm like, which way is my right? The right is doing the things you've always done, right? Which is short-term gain, but long-term failure, right? So in the short term, I feel better because this is what I'm used to. I don't speak up. I swallow it down.
I can avoid it.
I can avoid the
have
conflict.
The easy situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what is that going to do for me long term, right? I already know I don't want that because that's why I'm at this crossroads. Now, taking the left, let's be real, short term. And I always say, I'm not exaggerating that in the beginning, it's going to feel so uncomfortable. You want to rip your skin off, right? You're doing things that you, to John's point, were not taught. You don't know how to do it, or maybe you do and you have a really bad experience with it growing up, for example, right?
Yeah, there needs to be another way, but it's like, I don't know what it is.
Right. And so you're at that crossroads, right? Like I realize that I have to do the thing right now that is so uncomfortable. I'm probably going to look stupid. I'm probably going to stumble over my words. I might cry. I might not be able to communicate it well. But long term, that's where I want to go ultimately, right? And so you got to stretch yourself a little bit, similar to fitness. You don't just walk into the gym once and then leave with a six pack, right? Like you got to go and build slowly. And so every single time you decide to choose that left turn, you expand your resilience for it a tiny bit. And every time it gets a tiny bit easier and easier and easier over time. Now that could be communicating, that could be anything. That could be setting boundaries, right? Whatever you struggle with, you're always going to get to that crossroads. And it's fine if you take the right sometimes. Sometimes it's too much. It's too much right now. I'm going to do this full well, being conscious and knowing that I'm taking this right.
12 years and I still don't have a six pack, which means I should be listening to more episodes of the podcast.
I'm sticking with my 4. I love pizza.
I have 2.5.
It's too much.
We like food too much.
I
Let's be
have a
real.
2.5 pack and a lot of quality of life.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there, and you might have kind of just described this, but I want to ask a more direct question. Is there a litmus test? Is there a checks and balances we can have with ourselves when we find ourselves in these scenarios, aside from just increased level of awareness with ourselves, and then maybe one that we can apply to, let's say, an intimate relationship, one with a partner that we have or somebody that's in our life. It could be even a family member, someone that's really not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But you know what? This is new.
Yeah.
I want to get better at taking left turns, but I also want to gauge, like we do in the gym, we can see the numbers on the barbell go up. We can see the weight on the scale go up or down.
Right.
We can, have qualitative measurements. Is there something like that for this in relationships?
I think for me, I bring it all back to self and your relationship with yourself. I think it starts there. And so to simplify, you're either connecting with self or disconnecting. Yeah. And I really try to bring things to street level. And so if you are sweeping things under the rug, if you're avoiding conflict, if you're doing things like that are unhealthy, if you're pushing down, if you're numbing, you're disconnecting with self. And then if you're doing the hard thing, which is, hey, listen, I want to tell you how I feel, or I want to tell you how I want you to touch me, or whatever it is that's hard, you're actually connecting with self. You're fixing the punctures in your self esteem balloon. You know what I'm saying? So
Even when we're talking to this other person, we're really talking to ourselves.
Yeah, the act of talking about your feelings is actually proving to yourself through action that you deserve to be heard.
Your feelings matter.
You know?
Powerful.
And we also talk about intimacy in this book, and even like in the bedroom, I think, especially because of locker rooms and pornography and stuff like that, and a lot of people are not their true selves or have a difficult time communicating and are making a lot of left turns or repeating patterns.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way from high school. And so there's a lot of disconnection and a lot of, no new experience. It's a lot of us tracing old experiences.
Doing the same thing. Right. It's
until we wake up and we're like, we don't want to do this anymore.
Well, and I think that's it. I think to your point, when you say litmus test, so there's 2 points. One, litmus test to me, which has been powerful for me, but also for most of my clients, is resentment as a litmus test. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
I always say resentment should be the thing that in the beginning of any kind of self-betterment journey, you get really familiar with, because we all know what it feels like. The second you feel resentment, and I mean the tiniest little whiff, it doesn't have to be some massive, I want to end the relationship with this person. You need to check in. Something's going on, something's not being said, boundaries are being crossed or not said at all, whatever that thing is. Resentment is almost always your litmus to be able to say, I need to check in and then figure out what's not being said, right? But then as far as going up in weight, it is really hard with self-betterment to be like, oh, I'm getting better at this. What usually happens, and this is kind of frustrating, is that you don't notice. And then let's say, 6 months from now, your mom picks a fight with you about something she knows is going to goat you, which maybe that's just me and my mom, and you don't respond in the same way. And it's like after the fact, you go, oh, wow, I totally didn't take the bait on that. And I walked away feeling really good about how I showed up in that. And it didn't turn into a blow up. It didn't turn into, right. But you have this after awareness where you go, oh shit, it's working. Yeah. So it's kind of unfortunate or frustrating because you don't really see it like you would see numbers on building on weight. Right. And you kind of just have to trust that the discomfort is doing what it's supposed to do, which is connecting you back to self, like John said. Or I talk about it like in terms of self-abandonment, you're choosing self. You kind of got to trust a little bit.
Yeah. And also with resentment, you have to have that conversation where it's like, how much of this is legit? I should be angry. And how much of it is my own.
Truly,
if I have resentment because Vanessa didn't kiss me in the morning, that's, I don't know if that's warranted, right? And so I think you have to evaluate the resentment instead of just acting on it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like weighing, pick your battles. Definitely in a relationship, I think that applies. But, that's such a good point of, it would have been nice if I got this, or if he said that, or she did this kind of thing. But then it's, you bring it back to yourself and really go, well, how much of that is just me wanting anything from anybody right here, right now? Is it really about this disconnect I'm feeling, or is it a perceived disconnection?
Right.
And, then you can, I've kind of found that usually yields some other areas of work. Like, I'm not feeling as connected. I would want more connection from my wife, but I'm also I haven't seen another human being because I haven't left home. I'm working from home in 5 days.
Right.
So let me just get some other kind of stimuli, some other similar ways to get that input and to fill up my cup with my relationship with myself so that I can then, really be a fair measure to this really, really meaningful relationship in my life.
Yeah.
That's a really fair point. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about, I can't remember who it was that said, like, we have to stop looking at our partners as like need meeting machines, right?
Yeah.
First of all, we have to realize that the vast majority of our needs as human beings are going to go unmet. Secondly, it's not always our partner's job to meet our needs, right?
God,
a lot of times it's our responsibility. To your point, okay, yes, I'm feeling disconnected, and that's valuable information to know, and it's valid. But are there ways that I can make sure that I'm feeling connected to myself, right? Do I need to go do yoga or do, some kind of like meditative in my body practice so I can connect to my body? Do I need to, get on my spirituality right now? Like, am I disconnected from source? Am I disconnected from other people? And so it's important for us to take stock of like, what is mine versus like, what am I just expecting the other person to fulfill?
A lot of what you guys are talking about, reminds me more of qualitative measurements first and checking in with ourselves, the relationship with ourselves and relationship with other people.
Yep.
But again, I know from personal experience that there will come a time when your body, your health, your wellness, your mentality, your mental health for damn sure can only take so much rug sweeping before it turns into physical manifestations, before it turns into panic attacks, anxiety, ulcers, anger. Absolutely. These outlashes. Can you guys shine a light on like maybe you have some of this stuff going on in your life that could be root caused by the qualitative measurement stuff.
Totally.
So maybe someone can't quite get in touch with the awareness of qualitative aspect now, but maybe, like I am doing this. I do feel this kind of way. I have this kind of physical manifestation. There's a possibility to trace it back to the work we're talking about.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be running toward my vices or dopamine. You know, for many, obviously,
like
drugs.
Like easy escape.
Yeah.
But even fitness can be
totally.
addiction, you know, if that's where you go for 3 hours to run. I have a motorcycle I ride every day, you know, and I find connection and peace. I'm super present on it. But if I get on my motorcycle and I don't come back, that's and so, you know, also emotional eating. I do a lot of that, you know, if I'm pounding donuts and stuff, that might be a sign. So for me,
So we shouldn't hit up Sidecar after this?
No, we should.
we should.
But just get one. Just get one, not 6. I didn't know. Is there a sidecar here?
Not far. Right by the Grove. Yeah.
Now I'm just.
Now we know.
Now I don't know anything
Your mind
else.
is gone
Through that
blank.
one. Yeah.
But I think it for me, and I have addiction in my blood. My dad was an alcoholic, so for me, it's running toward what feels good.
Yeah.
When I want to numb, escape, you know, and that can be anything from food to, you know, anything that gives me dopamine. You know.
I'll tell you, for me, it actually took somebody else noticing it in me.
How so?
Which is, I think, really important for people to hear and understand. I was 25 when I started kind of my journey, right? I mean, I started therapy and I found yoga and I just really, I mean, it was everything all at once. And it was my best friend at the time that just said to me, kind of out of the blue, we were at a coffee shop and she said, "You're so angry. Like, why are you so angry all the time?"
After like
just
you're
because
doing all this stuff for yourself, and she's like, "You're angry."
No, this is
like,
before.
Oh, before.
It was the catalyst. It was the catalyst conversation where I was
we
just.
got the angry therapist, but we have the angry yogi.
I know.
Like,
Well, I wasn't doing yoga yet. I hadn't done anything yet.
Happy isn't that interesting.
Yeah,
the happy therapist isn't that interesting.
The happy therapist, right? No, I mean, that was the catalyst for me, because then I took that and I decided to go to therapy. I don't know, like, why am I so angry? I truly didn't know. You know, a lot of us don't. I mean, we can read all the self-help books we want, look at all the pastel memes on Facebook we want.
But is it that she said you were angry, or is it that was the first time you actually looked at it instead of being defensive?
Ooh.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's yes and. I think it's both.
You actually heard it and received it.
I heard it, right? I think we have to be in a place to hear it. Because listen, even in therapy, if you can go into therapy, and I know so many people that are like, "Oh, I've been in therapy for 20 years." I'm like, really? Because I can't tell.
Oof.
I hate to say that, but it's like, number one, are you being honest with your therapist?
It's like,
because
I've been
a lot
training
of
for
people,
20 years. Like, really?
why can't I see any gains, right?
Yeah.
Are you really being honest with your therapist? Because it happens a lot where people aren't. And are you actually taking in what they're saying, right? Because so many times we defend against it. And so I think you're right, John. There was something about that moment, whatever it was, that moment, that person, that instance.
Where you heard it.
Where I heard it.
Yep.
And I had a real like, holy shit moment. And it was a catalyst for me. But I say that for the listeners who are maybe not on that journey, air quotes, right? And can say, well, how do I know? Well, are you open to feedback? Are you hearing the people in your life? And they might not be saying it direct. Maybe they're saying it indirectly,
What
right?
are they not saying?
What are they not saying, right? Or maybe they're not saying it at
Who's
all.
not spending time with
Exactly.
Who's not calling you back?
Exactly.
Who's sending you to voicemail?
But are you willing to hear it, or are you going to get defensive, like you said? And I think for a lot of us, that if we're open, that can be a real, again, catalyst.
Yeah. For me, it was an ex saying to me, "You're not happy." And I remember being very defensive. What are you talking about? Like, we have a good time. I'm not happy. I'm ambitious. I'm out doing things. And then looking back, I mean, she was right. I wasn't happy inside. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes those people see us way better than we can see ourselves, right?
Really.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's like what comes first, the cart or the horse, you know?
Right.
That's why I think it is. I focus so much, and it's so important and so valuable, so invaluable to have at least one person in your life that is your ride or die, that is a family member, a friend, an intimate partner, whoever. It's so important to get to the point to where you have at least that one person that can call you out, that is going to be acting from a place of love, even when it hurts, and especially when it hurts.
Yeah.
Because for me, that was my then girlfriend, now wife. And kind of cued that question about the physical manifestations because that's where I was. And I had this huge breaking point. Turns out undiagnosed PTSD at the time of just panic attacks and lashing out and just dipping away physically and mentally and emotionally. And she called me out one day on it. It's like, look, this is not going to work for you in your life and what you want. It's definitely not healthy, but it's also not going to work for us.
Right.
And that was the most bitter pill to swallow, most painful thing to hear. Nobody likes to be given an ultimatum, but the ultimatum stings even more when you're like, fuck, you're right.
You're right.
Like, you're so right.
Yeah.
Was that the catalyst for you to go on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I was sort of kind of beginning, dipping my toes in at that time.
Yeah.
But it only was until she presented that to me, where we had that moment when I had this severe kind of panic attack response. And I realized that not only is she right about being unhealthy, but just the future that I wanted became so crystal clear, and was like, damn, I want that more than not dealing with these problems.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's when listened to all the podcasts, journaled, went back to therapy,
all that
and
stuff.
Here I am 7-8 years later.
Yeah. What's unfortunate is the people that are the closest to us, usually we're the most defensive with. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like, and this reminds me of maybe a few months or a year ago, Vanessa and I said to each other, I don't like the way that we talk to each other. We're getting to a place where we're just kind of snapping and
we work together a lot, right?
So
You're together constantly, and
talking to each other like siblings kind of thing.
Like, I don't like the way we are talking.
I just said, I was like, I don't like that. Yeah, we both are doing it to each other, and it just doesn't feel respectful. It didn't, I don't know, I didn't like it.
But there's a huge difference if she said, hey, John, I don't like the way you're talking to me, which then my shield comes up. Well, what about, but if you say, yeah, I don't like the way that we're talking to each other, it neutralizes it. So,
because I owned it, right? Like I totally was aware that I was doing it too. I could have very well been like finger waggy. I don't like the way you speak to me. But to your point, where's that going to go, right?
Yeah.
What kind of conversation will that be?
But that was a cold shower for me because I realized, because it's like the whole boiling frog thing. It happens over time. It's like a dripping faucet. And then you wake up one day and you're not, there's no respect. You're talking to the person that, you should be loving the most, like they are your child or, so whatever, right? And so I think over time, a lot of people fall into that space and we're so defensive.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a saying around that, right? Where it's like the people that you love the most are usually the ones you treat the worst.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that, right? Where it happens a lot.
Probably getting the full scale of the truth. The truth.
I think you also have like a misconception that they won't leave.
Right.
Right? Where
you've been through so much, where are you going to go?
Right. Your girlfriend, now wife. I mean, good on her for being like, I'm sure it's like, I love you. And I'm sure that was hard for her. And I'm sure she had to do a lot of inner searching to get to that point where she was like, I'm either staying or I'm going based on what he says.
And at that time, we had already had conversations about like the future and getting married. Right. And so then I was like, what do you mean? Like, we made plans.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about Al-Anon right there, right? Like that's the work of Al-Anon. The work of codependency recovery is just to say like, you can love somebody, but sometimes you have to love them from a distance, right?
Yeah.
And the loving hand sometimes says no. That's the most loving hand.
During that time, we actually went through about a 5-month gray area break kind of thing to work on just that.
Yeah.
It was the most painful experience, one of the most painful experiences I've gone through because it was so meaningful and tumultuous at the same time, but it had to happen.
Let me ask you, like in hindsight now looking back, having come through that, now you guys are where you're at now. Do you feel like, and this might be like maybe too hard to answer, but do you feel like that experience somehow on some level told you in a way that you could be real, do your work, show up, be vulnerable, and this person would stick around?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll peel back some more layers on me if this is the therapist is in session.
I'll say we got two therapists here. I'm curious. This is what happens.
And I only now realize this kind of after that experience and going through a lot of work, self-work, professional therapy. I definitely have this association to meaningful relationships in my life not lasting. Usually with men, because my father died when I was 19, passed away when I was very young. I had just left home. I was just a brand new, young soldier. And then every other kind of like meaningful guy relationship that I had, like, you know, even my younger brother, you know, but all these other guys that I met and served with in the military, you know, we would go through a lot and then we were gone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, two of my closest guy friends committed suicide after they got out of the service. And so then I realized that there's this pattern of the closer I get and the more that I commit to myself and commit to this person, this relationship, it's literally just a matter of 2 years tops before they're
gone.
Like out of my life or gone from this
Right.
earth.
The riskier it is for you,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
What's the false belief that you formed from those experiences? Is that if I get close to this person, they're going to go anyway? So why get close? Or what's the false belief that came from?
You know, that's a good question. I think it's probably because it's like when I do get to that point, there's no turning it off. Like when I do commit, I'm fully committed. You have my full heart, my full attention. I'm so invested in you to an unhealthy level sometimes that I disregard my own needs and healthy boundaries. And so I just know that I'm going to get to the point to where I'm giving so much and caring so much. If you're going to go anyway, like, you know, where's the cutoff?
Right.
Yeah. I have to like self-preserve.
So does that create a moat around you, meaning that you're scared to lose people and so you're not going to give it all? Or
Not anymore.
Yeah, but it used to.
Not anymore for sure. Since going through that with May, my wife, and really the last 2 years of cracking open myself in a big way, and which I want to get to pushing past judgment, staying in curiosity, I have definitely I've expanded my ability to just let pretty much everybody in. And I have much quicker, immediate litmus test basically of like how deep I can probably get with this relationship. How deep do I want to get this relationship?
The discernment piece we were talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like, I feel like I can get to that point way faster. And so I establish healthy boundaries more quickly. Because then after that, I'm like, wow, this is the best. Like we're just in pure love, pure flow, guy, girl, professional, personal, whatever. And it just flourishes.
Well, and I think what's really important too is it's kind of going back to what you were saying about the importance of always having at least that one person, that ride or die.
I've always had at least one person.
Right?
Exactly. Good point.
But I also think too, you know, we're such an attachment-based society, for better or worse, that I think what we do is we get ourselves into these, I don't know, traps where it's exactly what you were communicating about the realization you had about yourself. I'm in a trap where I only allow myself to get so deep because I have this false belief that if I do, people will leave. And here's the thing, you're not actually getting that connection, right? I mean, it's not fake, but there's only so far you can get, right? And it's not deepening for you. That's not spiritual in connection with for you. And even if you know this is a temporary situation, why not get close, right? Like, why not connect at that level, especially once you're aware that I'm operating from fear and I'm preventing myself from having amazing connections. Not every amazing connection has to last forever, right?
Oh, that's so powerful. I wish I could have heard that, especially during my time in the military, because whether, you know, we lose people or you just get transferred or whatever, I wish that I had that knowledge
mindset going in.
I can have it all right here, right now. And there's going to be a timeline on every relationship. There's going to be a timeline. Some are just shorter or longer.
Nothing's promised.
That's so powerful.
Well, because we as a society put so much weight on the promise.
Right.
You know?
Right. This can't
you're
end.
my best friend. We've been, you know, through high school together. So we need to be drinking wine coolers on a porch swing when we're 80.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe
Otherwise,
not,
the relationship meant shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? It like tarnishes the entire
Like time
relationship
invested
somehow.
automatically means time worth.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Like same thing with marriages, right? Like it's like we look at the number of years that we're together somehow as the badge versus like the
I've
depth
been in 20
of
years.
connection.
Why would I leave? You know, like you still got 50 more years to live. You know,
Right?
like,
Are you
potentially,
happy?
yeah.
Like, is this a connected relationship? Because if it's not, 50 years is a long time.
Or, you know, we've been, you know, dating for 2 years. When are we getting married?
That
A lot of that, you know,
Right.
The whole ticking clock.
I need to kind of lock it in.
I need the your signature. I need the promise. You know?
Yeah. So let's bring it back to the judgment and curiosity piece.
Yeah.
I think like that. This is my show, but like I don't want to make this about me. But what you guys are talking about is it's hitting for me personally.
Yeah.
So this is why I love this platform so much. So again, thank you.
Yeah. Of course.
Thank you.
But judgment and curiosity, I think, is so important. What do you mean by that? How can we get out of judgment, get into curiosity. What does that look like, and how is that going to level up our relationships?
For me, judgment is a low frequency and curiosity is a very high one. And so the reason why I used to be a miserable fuck was I was living always in dread and worry, and then in judgment. I also grew up in Los Angeles. I used to be a screenwriter, so in that world, so lots of judgment, and lived very outside in instead of inside out.
Things,
chasing things, lined with desperation, tying worth to something that is external, exchanging my truth for some kind of membership. That was my whole 20s and 30s. And then I realized if you start pulling from curiosity, starting with curiosity of self, what you can do, who you are, what you want to leave behind, all these big questions, there's a fearlessness about that, right? And then you're expanding and you're living on a higher frequency instead of judgment, which you are constricting. So I see curiosity as curiosity and creativity are two of my favorite, like expansion, frequencies. So
I think there's a good differentiation there, or a synonym, if you will. I think I would even look back to myself 2 years ago, people that are wanting to become more curious and recognizing from their own means or maybe getting called out, like, you're judgy, you're this, you're cut off.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean get curious? But, how can you tap out of your norm and just do things that are creative outlets? Creativity is curiosity. Curiosity is creativity.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so to answer that question, but also build off what you just said, John, I think...
Don't build off what I said. You got to start from scratch. I know
what you guys are talking about in the car right home.
I think with the whole idea of being curious too, so many times, whether it's romantic relationship, friend relationship, parental, doesn't matter. We think we know this person, right? We really stop getting curious after a certain point. I already know what you're going to say before you say it. I already know what you're thinking before you've thought it, right? And that in itself strips away any potential for vulnerability or intimacy, right? Because you're walking around in assumptions. And it's simply not true, right? Period. Black and white, hard stop. And so if you can notice that you're in that space in your relationships, whatever relationship, or even with self, I think that awareness piece can help you turn back on the curiosity, right? Like John just told me a story about himself 2 or 3 days ago that I had never heard. And I remember laughing and being like, right. There was a moment in my head when I was laughing where I had like I don't know everything about him.
Wow.
Right? And that's exciting. I mean, it's exciting to know. And if you go into a dialogue or even an argument with somebody where you're really curious about where is this coming from? Right? Or what is this bringing up in you? Right?
Yes.
What are you associating this with? Are there things from childhood that this is bringing up? Like, I know not everybody's a therapist. I get that. But there is something really magical when you can look at that person as an other with so many layers and so many things that you will never know. I don't care if you're with them for 50 years. It really helps you stay in curious and not in judgment, right?
What's the story that I told you that you didn't know about me?
You almost pooped your pants.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Everyone has one of those stories.
Not everyone.
Have a couple.
Not everyone.
That's for
Just going to say, not everyone has
we did a little staycation.
So I'm glad you two can connect on that.
We can talk later, yeah. That'll be for the Poopcast.
Growing up in LA and being a gearhead, like I love automobiles and motorcycle stuff, I've always had this vision of taking a 911 up PCH to Santa Barbara. Never has happened. And so my brother got one, a brand new one. And so I said, I need to borrow it. And so we did a little staycation up Santa Barbara. And I was telling your stories about how I almost shit my pants once on that.
But he was on a date, nonetheless.
I was on a date, yeah.
Oh, even
Which just
better.
makes it even better.
MCT oil. That
it'll get you some.
It was a smoothie with it. And then we were on a motorcycle, so it shook things up from Silver Lake to Malibu. So by the time I got to Malibu, it was 2 seconds, find something now. And I knocked on the men's restroom, it was locked. I ran into the women's restroom, and a woman looked at me, and she was doing makeup, and she just assumed I came into the wrong restroom. I went in past her, and she was like, what the fuck? And I went into the stall, And then but I got really lucky.
Disaster pants.
Disaster everywhere. Yeah.
Road trips are not the time to try a new MCT oil.
Well, I didn't know it was in the smoothie, but anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
Either way,
Yeah,
this is hilarious. I didn't know this.
I didn't know
We
it,
were sitting
yeah.
at the bar. I was dying laughing. I was like, see, I mean, this is what happens. You think you know everything and you don't, you know?
There's something in that book, and it's called Finding Beauty in the Contrast. Which we didn't start off like lightning in the bottle or eyes locked across the room. It was very rocky, and I had to find, because we're so different. So I had to find beauty in the contrast. It reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Turning your dial from judgment to curiosity to find beauty in your differences.
Yeah.
I want to get to something related to the book, but first, you kind of present a topic I think that is so important for yourself, relationship with yourself, and your significant other relationships, partnerships. How else, besides maybe like I never told you this story, how else can we make sure that we have something new to share with our partner? I believe that is not losing the relationship with yourself. Doing things with yourself, by yourself, having your own life and identity so that you can come to the table with your partner, with your whoever.
With a life.
Exactly.
Yes.
And still surprise them. Share something where like, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
I'm
What
going to
does that
give you
look like?
one little sentence, and I'm pretty sure Estelle Perel is the one who coined this, but I now use it all the time. Fire needs air.
Fire needs air. It's interesting because I'm an Aries. I'm a fire sign.
Fire needs air.
My wife is
she
Aries.
Aries?
I'm Libra. So we're
Yeah.
air and fire.
And I'm Taurus, so we're very different. Meaning, right? Any kind of fire. Again, we don't have to even be talking about romantic relationships. If you want passion and eros
breath.
and desire, you need desire. You need air. You need space. You need sense of self, right? You need connection to self. So many relationships. I mean, listen, I could go on and on about this idea that like our society, we're bred to be codependent, right? It's the air we breathe. We are taught that this is what romantic relationships look like, right?
Like to your point earlier, or like, oh, it's been 6 months, it's been 2 years. Better put a ring on it. Better move in together. Like,
Right.
it's just,
Spend all your time together.
Yeah.
We lose all sense of connection to self. Now your hobbies become my hobbies and vice versa, right? You have to ask me permission before you go on a guy's trip, like all of this stuff. Fire needs air. So many clients come to me and they can't figure out why they feel like platonic friends with their partner.
Yeah.
Well, now,
My
first of
roommate.
all, let's be real. The last couple years during this pandemic has been hard. Nobody's really gotten air, literally and figuratively. So we have to at least acknowledge that. But the question is really like, what are you doing for yourself?
yeah, truly.
Spend some time apart. Do your own thing. Pursue your passions. Do what lights you up and makes you excited. Then you're going to be more excited about your partner.
I think that is one of the things that blows the minds the most of our family, our friends, especially when we meet new people or when one of us is out and it comes to light that like, oh, wait, you're married? Like,
Yeah.
where
Where
is she?
are they?
Where is he? Like, well, I'm just doing this. I'm just doing this by myself. I'm doing it with my friends, whatever. And that catches the attention of other people more than anything else about like, she let you do what?
Yeah,
Let
yeah.
you
She
do
let
what?
you- oh, God.
He's okay with you going out looking like that.
Right.
And like we're each other's number one cheerleaders. I'm like, killing it. Go talk to some rich dudes. Like
Get some drinks.
get some free drinks when you're in Vegas.
Exactly.
Like I did
But that takes a
four-day
lot
trip to
of-
Tulum without her. And
Right.
That
it's-
takes a lot of security
In the
both
relationship
people.
and in self.
Yeah, we're in
So-
year 8, of course. We've gone through all the things that I shared, but but you have to put in those reps of the relationship as well. You have to put in the solo time as well. But you all are the experts here, and you wrote the book on it. So, like, does that play a role? And how big? a role?
So I have an anxious attachment style, meaning I'm holding on to her leg, right? She has an avoidant, which means that air comes easy for her, right? Instead of giving me air, she gives me a tornado. Fire doesn't need a tornado.
That's the
Fire just
feminine.
needs a little bit of air.
That's a feminine.
Baby, come back.
Fair. I will not deny that.
So it's hard. So my struggle is, it's not like jealousy or I don't or anything. I don't feel like she's going to cheat on me or anything like that. But it's knowing what I need, and that's a healthy need, right? Or if it's my shit, I need to work through it because I'm anxiously attached. So
that's huge.
You know,
Yeah.
it's usually in the intimacy, making me feel desired. Where's my tongue time? It's something that makes me feel.
Like you said that right into the microphone, by the way. Where's my tongue time?
Oh my God!
Now I know what the clip is.
Yeah, exactly.
John Gottman talks about the 6-second kiss, which I love because I don't think we kiss
60 seconds.
No, 6 seconds.
6 seconds.
60 seconds is a whole.
That's
thing.
a lot.
That's an afternoon
That's
delight.
like 8th grade.
I'm like, I don't have time for that shit.
No, not if you have kids. 6 seconds. It's just a 6 seconds.
6.
But 6 seconds is a long time. And we actually try. I think it's amazing. But we try to do that once a day, twice a day.
Beautiful.
But for me, it's like vitamins. It's like I love it. She doesn't need that kind of stuff as much, and so I have to be aware of when I'm grabbing her leg, needing her, and I need to self-soothe myself. And when the need is legitimate, like if we don't have sex for 3 months, I think it is legitimate. I could say, hey, I need that connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, yeah, I get it. It's hard because I do tend to lean more avoidant. So I think in that dynamic, which is very common, anxious and avoidant love each other, just like anything on the opposite side of the spectrums. We activate the shit out of each other.
Well, the more anxious I am, the more avoidant,
and vice versa, right?
And the more avoidant she is, the more I. So
right,
it's like,
and it's the whole like codependent, the AA Al-Anon dance. I mean, we all love the opposite because the opposite activates the shit out of us.
Yeah.
It provides us an opportunity to look inward and do that work, right? But also, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so my side of that would be how much of this is me really actually needing space, right? And feeling suffocated, and that's valid, or how much of this is I'm leaning a little bit more into my avoidant and I need to actually lean into him a little bit more, right? And kind of risk that vulnerability that I try to shy away from. So it's a
dance.
I was just going to say it's a dance.
Yeah. And I think we can't snap back, meaning just because you've been together for 8 years doesn't mean that your relationship's perfect. There are days that you kind of snap back to your default and then just being aware of it and then coming back. Yeah.
But I imagine that you guys get a lot of pushback about that. Like I'm sure it blows people's minds.
Does, yeah. Like that example of I went with a group of our mutual friends to Tulum for a music festival, and she couldn't go. She wanted to go but couldn't because of work. And they're like, wait, Chase is coming? May's not?
Yeah.
By himself?
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Like what?
Right. What's the intention? Yeah.
Or like we'll be out and we're both very kind of social butterflies when we go out, and like we'll spend the entire evening apart. And, we'll both meet people or talk to groups of friends and they'll come back and they're like, oh, I'm going to get my husband. They're like, you're what?
Yeah.
Like we've been out for 3 hours. I had no idea. But it's like, does it matter? Like why can't we have this interaction now and then, go back to our partners later? Kind of thing.
Yeah. You're with your partner all the time.
We did a video once about
yes.
I'll see you at home.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
You're speaking to my avoidant soul right now.
Yeah, and you're creating anxiety for me. We did a video once about telling people that it's okay because we're human. We're going to have fantasies about other people. And we got a shitstorm. Like, what are you talking about? We should not.
It's not.
I'm not
okay.
saying that you should fantasize about someone else if you're making love to your partner.
Every time.
But I'm saying as humans,
there's
we're going to
human
be
nature
attracted.
versus should.
Right. And we're going to be in intention and all that, but we're going to be attracted to other people. And if you say that you're not, you're lying.
Yeah.
You're
lying, and you're setting
and
yourself up.
suppressing.
Yes, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting your relationship up for failure.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you want to invest in a relationship with that person.
Right.
You could find someone attractive, and that's like the car that went by.
Yeah.
Look at the wheels on that thing.
Look at the buns on that thing.
Woo.
He must work out. Before I get to my final question,
Yes.
I want to again just acknowledge you guys' work and this new work here before us. I'm going to have this down in the video notes and show notes for everybody. It's not me, it's you. Break the blame cycle, relationship better. Especially when I have authors on the show, I'm curious what during the writing of this book was most solidified for you, and what maybe came up as a surprise or is like the thing left that like in writing this, I realized something new or something kind of came up that you didn't quite address or keeping us for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the beginning of this whole conversation, I don't know if you remember writing this book because it happened kind of just hitting the ball back and forth. But what was important for me was two therapists showing themselves.
Yeah.
So I was less. For the last 12 years, I've been running with that flag. I feel like the guy that kind of went rogue as a therapist, because I started to work in unconventional ways, and I thought, one day I'm going to write a book about love and relationships, and what is that going to look like? And even with that, it has to be something where we as therapists are wearing the human hat and saying,
first,
hey,
right?
Here's what we struggle with. We even opened the book saying there's a popular TV show where a popular TV therapist, and when the show's over, he holds his wife's. She comes out of the audience, they hold hands, and they they strut down the stage, and it's always turned me off because it's always
Such
like
bullshit.
look at us, and you could be like us.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how to get there. And it was really important that the tone of the book was, we're coming with you, not at you. And that was what I really cared about. The book kind of wrote itself, through stories and stuff.
I think the discovery piece for me was actually how well we wrote together. We work really well together. I mean, some of the other stuff we're continually
we don't love
working
well
on.
together, but the work is easy.
We're very different every other way, but we work really well together. And I couldn't believe actually how easy it was to write a book with him. I mean, to your point, it's like I barely remember writing it. It happened so fast and organically.
Just like flow.
Yeah, building off of each other. And so I was kind of shocked at how much I enjoyed the process. But yeah, I mean, it's an exciting, he's written a few books. So this was kind of my first soiree into the book world. I mean, I've written, but just not published author. And so for me too, it also was like kind of cracking that open and being like, oh, I can do this and I want to do this and I have a lot to say.
I don't remember writing it because she actually wrote the whole thing.
I ghost wrote your parts. I definitely edited your part because that is more my MO. I'm like, John.
I splatter paint. And then,
2 spaces after a period, the punctuation goes inside the quotation marks. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you'll fix that.
That's why we're together.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all of what you're talking about and everything in the book, I think definitely contributes to, the whole reason why we're here talking today and the theme and mantra of the show is to live a life ever forward. A phrase actually, from my late father, who I mentioned.
Oh, interesting.
One of those guys, one of those deep, meaningful relationships that unfortunately is no longer here.
Yeah.
And so I always ask my guests, what does that mean to you when you hear ever forward? What does it mean to you to live a life ever forward?
Oh, shit.
What it means to me, the first thing that would come up is constantly living out of, I think curiosity is a buzzword for today's conversation. I love being enamored. I love being curious. I love being excited about things. I'm a bit of an information nerd. I could be in school forever. I'm probably going to go back for my PhD. It makes him cringe, right? But that's just who I am.
Yeah.
I hate school.
My wife is the same.
Yeah, it's just, I love being fascinated. There's something so, I get drunk on fascination. And so when I think of what does it mean to be ever forward, it means that. It means living a life of fascination. And it's not like I have to be in a PhD program. I get fascinated when I go outside and it's jasmine season and I smell it and I just have to stop and close my eyes and let it wash over me.
Amazing.
I'm very easily entertained, and to me, that's forward momentum. That's what it means, ever forward.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. John?
She gets drunk on fascination. I get drunk off one beer.
You do.
'Cause I'm
You
allergic
do.
to alcohol.
I do not.
Yeah.
And MC2 oil.
Yeah, apparently.
For me, what comes to mind is Bruce Lee's "Be Like Water," and then "This Too Shall Pass." And so, forever forward, that there is an ebb and flow to life, right? I think a lot of us, I know I used to hold on to and live in the trenches all the time, and would not be. I didn't have the ability to pull back and see the 30,000 or the cumulative. I would only be in the anxiety and what was happening in the moment and think the sky was falling, which meant I was in a fight or flight panic state, which then puts you naturally in a lower frequency. Forever forward or ever forward, ever forward means that whatever we're talking about, anything under the umbrella of life and even death, that there is evolution, there's death, there's rebirth, there's cycle, there's circle, even the hero's journey, all of that. So it's great. I love, I didn't know that came from your father,
so
which is amazing.
A little bit more backstory. My father served in the military as well, big family tradition. And long story short, his first unit, every unit you're in, at least in the military, there's a creed, a saying, and his unit was ever forward, 116th Infantry Regiment, and he brought it home. You know, he joined the Army when I was like 5, and so we heard it, saw it, lived it, ate it, breathed it our whole life. But it was just like, yeah, Dad, cool, whatever.
Right.
But then when he passed, I had just left. Like I said, I was in the Army for like a year and a half. He had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, so it was like a really horrible experience. But literally up to his dying breath, he never complained. It was always, what can I do for you? I mean, even when he was a shell of a human being immobilized, you could just see in his eyes, he's like, I'm good. What do you need? And so it was just ever forward. And then I kind of used that as like a coping mechanism, defense shield. Like, hey, here's a way for me to kind of take this cool phrase that my dad said his whole life, and I'm going to turn it into something and run with it. But it was a shield.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was a ball and chain, even though it was a admirable one, a family one, it was still a ball and chain until, you know, that moment, breaking down with my then girlfriend, now wife, and it all kind of came to a tipping point. And I finally started living, putting one foot in front of the other, and like making meaning out of that ball and chain, and really turning and moving forward with my own life.
I love that. Yeah.
It's interesting how that was kind of a bumper sticker for you, but now it's become a way of life.
A mantra.
Yeah, a mantra.
Went from bumper sticker to mantra.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all so much for your definition. Thank you so much for your time and everything you do here in the world. Like I said, we're going to have the book down in the show notes for everybody, but this was so great. Thank you so much.
This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.